Hello fantastic people, I hope you are having a great day. Today we'll learn how to make our character blink while taking damage. Because I will need a shader graph file, I'm creating a folder for it and call it shaders. Then I create the shader by going to create, shader graph, URP, sprite shader graph. I'm going to call it blinking sprite. Then I double click it to open the shader graph. I add a property for the texture 2D and call it main text. The naming here is very important. Property with that very name will be populated automatically by the texture provided on the sprite renderer. Because in shader graph we cannot work with the texture directly, I add a sample texture 2D node and connect them together. Now I connect the A, which stands for alpha, with the alpha of the shader itself. To make the preview a little bit more useful, I'm going to set the default value for the main text. In the preview we can see that the alpha works as expected. If we connect the RGBA output with the base color of the shader, we'll see the color as expected in the main preview. This, however, won't allow us to change the colors dynamically. To do that, I'm going to add two new properties, one for the blink color and one for the blink factor. The factor will control how much of the original colors and how much of the blink color will be used. I set the default value of the blink color to white, and then I change the mode of the blink factor from default to slider. I leave the default values as they are. The minimal value will be 0 and maximal 1. Then to decide which color will be visible at this very moment, I'm going to use the Lerp node. It's important to connect the nodes in the right order. For example, now I'm connecting the blink color as A and the sample texture to the as B. If I add the blink factor, this will make the sprites white when the blink factor is 0, which is the complete opposite of what I want. So I need to make sure that the blink color is connected to B and that the sample texture to D is connected to the A. And of course I need to connect the output of the Lerp node to the base color of the shader. Now I'm saving the shader, and in the project panel I create a new material by clicking on the shader with right mouse button, then going to create, and finally material. I'm going to call it blinking sprite. Then, because my character consists of multiple sprite renderers, I'm going to change material on all of them. Now I'm going to do a quick test to see if nothing broke. All looks good. Time to write a script. In my scripts folder, I'm going to create a script and call it Sprite Blink. First, I need a serialized field to store the information about how quickly the colors will get back to normal. The higher the value, the quicker it will be. Then private field to store all of the sprite renderers. Now we create a private material property block that holds per renderer overrides for material properties. This makes sure that the original material itself is not modified. Then we need a private field to store the current blink factor. In the start method, we get all of the sprite renderers from children. Of course, instead you could store them in a serialized field and assign them manually in the inspector. Then we of course need an instance for the property block. Now let's create private applyBlinkFactor method. Inside of it we'll iterate through all of the renderers we have. First we get the information from the renderer's property block stored in our private field. Then on that block we set the float blink factor. If you are wondering where the name comes from, I simply took it from the shader graph. It's stored in the reference field of the property itself. Then we set the property block on the renderer. Now it's time to create a public method blink. Inside of it, I'm simply going to change the blink factor to 1 and call our new method. Then, in the update method, if the blink factor is smaller or equal to 0, I'm simply going to return and do nothing. Otherwise, I'm going to modify the blink factor. I'm going to use the method Lerp. For the initial value, I'm going to use the blink factor. For the final, I'm going to set 0. Then for t, I'm going to set time.delta time multiplied by our blink decay speed. Now when the blink factor is smaller than a certain very small value, I'm simply going to set it to 0. This is a small optimization, which will prevent this code from running for very small blink factor values. Then of course I call the apply blink factor. Now I need to call somewhere the blink method. In my case, perfect place will be a script that knocks back the player on collision. I simply check if the colliding object has the script, and if so, I call its blink method. Ultimately, I need to add the script to my character. Before we test it, please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. This will help larger amount of people to see my content and hopefully help me resolve their Unity problems a little bit. Let's test our solution. The decay is a little bit too slow for me. I'm going to increase the value in the inspector until I like the result. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Meanwhile, have a fantastic day, love you and bye bye.